We keep bringing you scenes from yesterday, reliving the events that happened in the streets outside of Parliament. And it really was where we witnessed, I beg your pardon, this is actually footage from Johannesburg that was taken. Now, as you do know, this is something that is happening nationwide, but these scenes that you're seeing were in the streets of Joburg, I suppose around the Braamfontein area by Wits University. But the scenes that we saw outside of Parliament yesterday were witnessed when they attempted to disrupt Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene's midterm budget that he delivered in Parliament. Now, this comes after South Africa's universities have been brought to a standstill by ongoing student protests. This week, students also rejected the Higher Education and Training Minister Nzimande proposed a 6% cap on university fees increases for 2016. Let's get a little bit of analysis on this now. And we're joined from our Pretoria studio by Somadoda Fikeni, a political and social analyst. Somadoda, it's good to have you on the program. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you, Leanne.
Now, yesterday, I'm not sure, I don't think anybody watched on yesterday without feeling a really sense that something big is happening in this country. We saw violent scenes of students protesting outside of Parliament. Somadoda, what do you make of them? I mean, they're attempting to disrupt Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene's midterm budget in Parliament. What are we reading into this?
What is happening is what has been happening for many years in the historically disadvantaged universities, but these were isolated. But for the first time, you do have a coordinated action which brings together different political formations on a common issue of student financial and economic pressures. And that in itself is unprecedented on the scale in the recent past. But it's also in addition to other cumulative pressures, the cost of living, unemployment, poverty, all those grinding very hard on the population at the time when the state itself seemed to have very limited resources.
What do you believe are the root causes of these protests? I mean, a lot of them, obviously, we're talking about high fees. That really is the big issue here. But is there more at play? Is this political?
To the extent that initially you had the students calling for transformation in historically wide universities, it mobilized students and gave them a foretaste of them being organized across the country, the Roads Must Fall campaign. But now that translated into the issue which is even more pressing, the financial and economic pressures. But not only that, remember that almost all the social ills, the economic challenges in the country, the youth are the ones who are bearing the brunt of that more than any other segment of the population. So this is more at play. You have the political dimension, but you also have the material conditions of students which have been worsening over time.
Yeah, I mean, I've been reading some of the analysis that's been taking place today in newspapers and the whole of yesterday, actually. I mean, some of the figures being bandied about showing that in order for a student to get a 4-year degree, obviously differing on the degree, I mean, this is an analysis, I imagine, of more of a science degree, it could cost in excess of 1.2 million rand. For a university student to walk away with a degree and become a professional. I mean, are these the numbers we're looking at?
These are the numbers, but worse still is the fact that every year some of them have been increasing way above your inflation rate. And not only that, NSFAS has been struggling to assist those most vulnerable. And even where such assistance is given at times, you find that they may have tuition fee, but they may not have money for transport or food, which makes it very difficult for those to get through the system. And some of them drop out, hence the throughput rate tend to be very poor, especially in the most vulnerable institutions and for the most vulnerable categories of students.
Yeah, I mean, we hear figures like this, and the average, never mind the average, the above average South African would struggle to let their child get a degree. Let's look at other countries that Look, what our students are fighting for right now, and they keep emphasizing, they're not asking necessarily for free tertiary education at this point. What they're wanting is a 0% hike when it comes to the next year's study fees. But we'll look at both of these issues, but let's talk free tertiary education. Can South Africa afford this?
Well, there was a moment where one would say South Africa could easily afford free education, but at this particular point in time, they would have to take some drastic steps to reprioritize, but most importantly, reducing inefficiencies in the system as well as those corruption, tendencies. Because if you look at irregular expenditure, if you look at wasteful expenditure, it comes to billions if you look at the Auditor General's reports every year. Only countries like Germany where you do have instances of free education, but South Africa would have to change the way it is doing things in the most drastic fashion to improve efficiencies and recover the money that is seeping through the system.
Yeah, I mean, there are examples of countries that do offer free tertiary education, and I mean, they seem to pull it off, and that's, I suppose, models we need to look at. But at this point, our students are asking for a 0% hike, whereas our higher education minister capped it at 6%. Can this be done? Can we offer a 0% hike?
I do think that can be a possibility, because universities will also have to look very carefully into their costing and pricing system. Investigation into why operational costs seem to jump sometimes 20%, when in actual fact the CPI is at 4, 5, 6%. Those are some of the things that one would have to look at. But the private sector, though, has to come on board, because I doubt universities alone with their reserves, those which have reserves, or the government alone can make the turnaround in such a short space of time.
Very quickly, very, very quickly, we saw nothing being handed from the medium-term budget yesterday to this cause. Do you think this is even going to, it's going to further deepen the crisis?
It may deepen the crisis if the president, the cabinet, doesn't immediately convene to deal with this matter and find ways of alleviating pressures on the students.
Let's leave it there. Thank you so much for talking to us here on the program. Political and social analyst Somadoda Fikeni talking to us from our Pretoria studios there. The latest coming in is the ANC will meet with youth and student leaders to discuss the ongoing Fees Must Fall campaign that has hit universities around the country. We'll get more of that in our news, and that'll be happening at 7 o'clock. Stay tuned.